Today's episode, we're going to talk about Super Bowl 59. We're recording this before it. So, Marty, I think we should start this conversation with who do you have in this game and why? Today, I was looking at all these different components of the Super Bowl and thinking through, what's coming up as we venture into this. The Super Bowl has become more than anything an advertising channel where most people are paying hyper close attention to the ads more than any other part of the game. Aside, if you're a super football fan, like I'm sure you're paying attention to it, but we know that people tune in just for the ads because the ads are like their own part of the show now. So I was looking at stats for this. This year's ads are selling for about $7 million.
Yeah.
Almost 8 for 30 seconds of airtime, which is bananas. But there's 123 million people that tuned in last year's. It's, that was a record from what I understand of Super Bowl viewership. And for like any, I don't know, television program, I suppose you would call it, which is pretty nuts. Now, they're also, just based on that number, 123 million, that's like 1 in 3 people, because the US, I think, most recently had 338.7 million people in like census data. That's how many people are here. And 123 of them are watching the Super Bowl. So 1 in 3 people are sitting down this Sunday, eating wings, having Doritos and chips and salsa and watching, people toss around a hand egg object.
Pigskin,
hand egg. That's what footballers like me call it, hand egg. Because when you put soccer, you put your foot on a ball. That makes total sense. This is basically hand egg.
No one's going to know what that means, but okay.
They are now. The 123 million people listening to this podcast are going to when they see our ad.
Well, that'll be an interesting statistic to see after the fact, because I think they're anticipating less. These two teams don't have the same draw.
Well, there's not a celebrity to either of these teams.
No.
Like, in the past, there's sort of been a celebrity.
Swift will be there.
Tay. Well, she's going to drive a lot of attention by herself.
Correct.
She's a force to be reckoned with for sure when it comes to attention. I just find it interesting that companies are paying so much.
Will she sneak in as like a performer during the halftime show?
Well, regardless of whether she's performing, right? She's going to be on camera. She's going to get attention. She's going to be in tabloids. Like, she's a media beast just by herself. And everyone kind of knows that that's happening. So there's surely going to be hype around it. I was thinking about this in athletics. The idea of vision is really common. We would call it something different. We would say like visualize, but same root, right? You're going to see vision. And I think what is really important as we go into a big event like this for business owners, for CEOs, for leaders, is to take a book from the athletic playbook, or take a page from the athletic playbook and like start to apply it to your own life. When you're an athlete going into this, visualization is a massive tool. And we know prolific athletes have hired coaches to work on visualization and really, the somatics, the embodiment of all these things. But here's something I thought about. These two teams were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago here in Arizona. And what I find fascinating about quarterbacks in general is that the best strength of a quarterback is their vision. Like literally, it's, their arm is there. They obviously have to deliver, but if they can see space and pockets for sowing the ball in between, they are typically more successful. And both of these quarterbacks, not only do they do that very well, but both of these quarterbacks have experienced the Super Bowl before, so they can visualize even better, right? And that's why sort of success begets success, because now you're in, you know what to expect anymore. You know what this tournament looks like. You know what the crowd noise and all the banners and lights and fireworks, like you can visualize really intentionally because you've already been there.
I was thinking, and I'm not a very good pool player, but it's very similar because the quarterback has to know angles, right? When they throw that ball, they have to anticipate that exactly where that ball is going to go, and that player is going to get there at the exact right time.
Yep.
So I thought that it's also about angles and can they always have to anticipate where that person's going to be.
Yeah, and I mean, this is why a defensive tackle or somebody right on the defensive line is trying to put their hands up and like block so that the quarterback can't see. And so that, like, the application of that makes sense, right? A quarterback would need to have good vision to be able to play at a high level. No different than a business owner. What I do think is the play to take out of the playbook, though, is quarterbacks sit down and at the very beginning of a season, this is true for any athlete, at the very beginning of the season, what are they looking at? The whole season is based on we want to be in the Super Bowl. And they might lose a game, but that doesn't mean that they change that vision. They're really committed to like one target. And I think athletics provides a really good maybe container for us to think about how to do that better in business. Because an athlete doesn't go like 3 games in, well, you know what? I don't want to win the Super Bowl anymore. I want to win the Copa America. That's a soccer tournament. Like, they don't say, I want to win Wimbledon, right? They have one objective. They're not changing their targets, but in business, we change our targets a lot. It's very easy to change your target in business.
What's interesting though is like if you're a really bad team, like the Giants were really bad this year. If you're like 1-12, 13, they do pivot what they're often working on. Then it becomes about getting the first round pick in the draft. And so there is belief that they alter that thinking, that you still want to win, but you're also mindful of number one for you might be picking the next best person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting.
And a win could knock you down from getting that.
For sure. And typically does.
Correct.
Right. I mean, that's normal. I do think that successful teams and going into Super Bowl, these are obviously, I mean, there's a whole lot of hoopla around like the referees being paid off by Kansas, but
Kansas City, okay.
Kansas, yeah, yeah. There's a whole lot of like memes going around how they're like paying off the refs. What I do know is that these two teams have made it to you're already at the highest level that exists in football, and then you have sort of, this is the pinnacle, the championship event, and to commit to a vision like that, to really commit to the idea that you could play at the high level, and for Kansas City, I mean, this is like their 6th appearance in a row, something nuts. Is that accurate?
They won 3 of the last 5 years they've won.
Yeah,
this would be 3 in a row for them.
So not only do they have sort of the A players to make that happen, but because they've got this recipe, the recipe keeps deploying, right? I think for us as business owners, we can take a lot of insight from finding a recipe that works, finding a vision that works, and then working towards it consistently. Now, again, in athletics, you have one. Just like win the championship, and then it resets. The clock resets. And in business, you don't quite have the clock resetting. And I actually think in business, it's dangerous to have the clock reset where you're like, year 1, let's do it again. But I do think there is something for, okay, we work towards our vision, and then we recalibrate, and we recalibrate, and then like we keep stretching this vision higher and higher. And as a business owner, it's critical to have something that you're stretching towards, or it gets very mundane.
But you probably don't know this. The guy who coaches the Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid, was
Philly guy.
Yeah, he coached in Philly for, I think I saw 14 years. Never won the Super Bowl ever. Goes to Kansas City and has now won it 3 times, I believe, since he's been there. Less amount of time. What I'm curious, like, what is it? Just because the right pieces of the puzzle came together in Kansas City? My guess is he hasn't changed a whole lot from when he was in Philly versus where it is now in Kansas City. Can never do it in Philly, and now can do it. Managed to get the right pieces to do it here.
That's a really good point, man. And think about it from his perspective, because I'm sure his vision has not changed.
No.
Right? His vision has probably always been, I want to win a Super Bowl. I want to get a ring.
Right.
And in that process, you could say, well, his seasons in Philly were failures, but they obviously taught him something that allowed him to then do this. You have to go through a vision requires tremendous commitment and usually a long-term mindset, which he clearly has to be able to do this. And definitely requires the right mix of people and team members and offensive coordinators. And a football team is a massive organization. It's a mega organization. There's hundreds of people that are employed as a part of this whole machine, whether directly or indirectly as part of it. And clearly something's working better for him here than there, though it may also be the compounding effect of close call. Didn't make it. I mean, he had, like, growing up near DC, the Eagles were always like a crosstown rivalry, right? It's like 90 minutes up the highway. So I remember McNabb. I remember Vic. I remember all these players, these quarterbacks that came in that, would terrorize now the Commanders or the Ravens, because I'm kind of rooted for both. But, like, if you couldn't get it done, it can't be easy to walk away from 10 or 14 unsuccessful seasons. Now, unsuccessful is sort of an unfortunate label in athletics. That's the cost of having one objective, is that you only have one measurement. You didn't win, right, is your measurement. In business, you can say, hey, well, maybe we didn't double our revenue, but we did attract new talent. We got a really good team in place. We revamped culture. We had a great customer experience that we launched. Right. We did, 16 events. Like, you have a lot more ways to say that you had a successful season.
You hear athletics, that? We don't. No, like in Baltimore, where we spent a lot of time. It was a successful season. Well, was it? Because you didn't win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I understand that things went well for a majority of it.
Yep.
We still didn't go over the finish line.
Yeah. Yeah. I find what's interesting in athletics compared to business is that in athletics, as a player, the game to game stress is very high, right? Until you get a couple seasons in. And then you start to realize that you got a long career ahead where you play every game. And as fans on the outside they're only game to game.
Right. And fickle as can be.
Super fickle, right? I mean, they're not loyal at all. They're like,
right.
They'll say they're fans and then they're ripping you on Twitter or whatever. Like, so there's this fixation on, like, what is this game and this game and this game. But once you completed, like, this is why rookies are like labeled the way they are, because they're still trying to get their bearings and they're like, dude, this is the biggest game of my life. Like, I got to prove myself. But the guy that's been playing for 7 years knows, look, it's a long career, man. Like, you have to be willing to like stay in this pattern for a long time. And if you're frantic and playing the short game, you're going to burn out. And a lot of players do burn out, or they get injured or things like that prevent them from having a long career. But to be a coach, you have to have a mega long horizon. You can't, I mean, you can get fired certainly for not performing, but you have to live under the assumption that you're going to keep getting better as a coach, that you're going to keep working towards the goal, whether you win the Super Bowl or not. You just have to keep committing to, like, I'm going to show up every day and we're going to keep getting better. And that's something that I really think CEOs have to master also.
Well, like, and because a football team has a CEO, they have an owner that's responsible for the team. How does a CEO of a team decide, all right, we haven't won the Super Bowl in 12 years, but we've had winning seasons.
Right.
What's the tipping point for an owner or a CEO at that point to say, we got to go a different direction because we're not getting over the finish line. Like with Andy Reid, after 14 seasons, you part ways. You're not ready to retire, so you go elsewhere. But at some point, there's a tipping point of a winning season isn't enough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to define, the challenge for what I see CEOs face is, how do you define a win? How do you find a winning season? How do you define a winning year?
Correct.
And the idea of vision to me is the answer to that question, because if you think of visualization as a strategy for a quarterback, just same as strategy for an organization, strategy for a football owner, it really has to do with, are we moving closer to that end state? Like, are we getting closer or further away? A winning season, in theory, would get us closer, right? Are we stacking up? Like, maybe we're reviewing a couple other metrics and we're looking at, rather than just completions and yards completed or yards thrown or yards run, we're actually looking at, like, what's the gap between our best three players and our next three players, right? How stacked are we on the bench? Or we look at, what's our recovery time like? Or how many injuries did we face this year that's going to set us back? What's our recovery program look like? There's a whole lot more that goes into a vision of a successful team than just what we see as fans. And to have a complete and comprehensive vision in that setting is the exact same recipe that we're taking CEOs through. And then I think CEOs need, whether they go through it with us or not, is to say, what are the details inside of this organization that get you where you want to go? And what I find interesting, there's a Simon Sinek quote that I've really fallen in love with and referenced a couple times this week. That quote is, as a leader, you're not responsible for the results. You're responsible for the people that are responsible for the results. And, in many ways, a coach doesn't have too much control. They have influence, but they don't have very much control. And I think in organizations, it's a very similar makeup. Less control. When CEOs let go of control and think more about influence, then the business tends to do a lot better because they're not in the weeds and they're not tinkering with all the details. They're instead, they're leading.
I mean, I knew I'd still say to this day, I was not successful in what I did without the people around me.
Can't.
I couldn't have done that well.
And
I was thinking also on those lines of what you're talking. Like if game one of the season, your quarterback gets hurt, it's easy to just kind of throw up your hands and say, well, that's the season for us. But that a business can we have one bad day, so we're going to throw out the whole year.
For sure.
You find a replacement that hopefully will at least get you close to where you want to go. Maybe not fully where you want to go, but you always have to adjust and adapt based on what's real, based on the reality. And if that person gets hurt on game one, you better have a backup plan in place in order to get you the next 17, 18 weeks of the year.
Well, man, I feel like a good comparison is a GPS to that sort of experience, right? If a coach loses their key quarterback in game one, like, hey, I'll draw it on the board. If you guys are listening, you won't be able to see it, but if this is the destination up here, right? We have Super Bowl, and this is our starting point.
There better be X's and O's. That's what
there's going to be a lot of X's and O's. So, week one happens, and then boom, quarterback goes down. Obviously, you're not going to be able to march that like straight to the Super Bowl now. It's not going to work that way. It requires a new pathway to find another quarterback.
Correct.
However, you don't change the destination. You don't change that you're still going to the Super Bowl. And that's an important conversation for a lot of leaders, that without a vision, you're basically just reactive all the time, right? You have no real way to say this is good or bad. It's like the whole Chinese proverb of like, a man comes in on a horse and like, man falls off a horse and gets hurt. Is it good or bad? Like, well, it's bad. He got hurt. Like, well, a week later, they came around, the government came around and asked all the men to volunteer for the army, and he was hurt, so he didn't get selected. Is it good or bad? And you kind of don't know unless you have a long-term vision of whether something is good or bad. Obviously, like a quarterback getting hurt and losing your initial driver of this vision is a bad thing, but you can recalculate. As long as you don't change the goal, you can recalculate.
I think, and we have clients in Philly, so they can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the last time Philly was in the Super Bowl, or at least a recent time they were in the Super Bowl, they went to the Super Bowl with a backup quarterback, I believe. So still managed to go to the big game by an alternate route.
Yeah. Yeah, there's there's a commanding presence in someone that can hold a vision. And when something like that happens, and this is commonplace in business, right? Somebody walks away. We just had a client today say, "Hey, look, a key player just turned in their notice." Like it does force you to recalculate. I actually think though that in moments like that, business owners have to be coaches. They really have to coach their team through whatever is going on and get everyone back connected to a North Star. Because you can have a panic exodus too, right? Well, they left, like I gotta leave. And dude, in the world of like post college athletics, I've been on some amateur teams. I've played on high level teams. I've competed in like tournaments with big money stakes at the end. And when like a key player leaves a team, sometimes the whole team just like collapses. Like, well, if that person's out, like he scored 9 goals, we only had 11.
Yeah.
The whole team can kind of crumble under this. So it's really important as a leader to coach your team through it.
Even if that isn't necessarily, like statistically, that might be true, but that's also a mindset of the other people on the team,
right?
Of overly relying on this one person to pull them along. So that it's also a mindset issue.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, the thing that I really love about using athletics as a metaphor for business is that most concepts track pretty congruently, almost exactly. Your teammates are going to get injured. In business, injury is not the same. It's not like you get in a collision running 18 miles an hour, but someone might have a kid or a car accident or get really sick and they're gone for 2 weeks, and you don't have the option to do anything other than respond. If you react, it's going to create problems just like you do in athletics. But there are hiccups along the way, and to influence your team to show up their best in times of uncertainty. I remember going through COVID with the team and helping a lot of businesses at that point. It really comes down to like, how does your leadership respond? And if leadership does not have a vision, it will be chaotic. It will be disruption 101. No one's going to know which way's down, who's up, where's north. Like it's just going to be the worst experience because you don't have a leader that's holding a vision. A leader is responsible. A CEO is responsible for like holding what they can see and not letting anyone change the direction. And it's wild.
Do you remember when Tom Brady, I don't know, did he retire? When he left the New England Patriots, there was so much back and forth about, well, did he make the team or was it Bill Belichick, the coach, who made the team? Back and forth, back and forth. So Tom Brady leaves. The team just collapses without him.
Yep.
Quickly make the assumption this guy was the real leader on that team.
For sure. Didn't he win the next year?
Something like that, yeah.
I think I don't know if it was the next year, but it certainly was within one or two.
2 of our Super Bowls after that.
Yeah. He went to Tampa Bay and was like, I'll do it myself then.
Yeah, right.
And interestingly, I think Tom Brady has often gone, he has done all kinds of speaking, and now he's an announcer, and that was a big deal.
This will be his first Super Bowl as an announcer.
Oh, that's cool, actually. So I think what would make him a good announcer? Well, what would make him a good announcer is what made him a good player. It's vision. Like he can see things that other people can't necessarily see.
Right. He'll see how it's unfolding.
Right. And as business owners and leaders, especially if you've got a team that's starting to grow in size and where you want, really talented people to be involved, vision is your superpower, man. It's like your way of getting way above and beyond the other competitors in your space. And that's not to say your vision is like I hate when people make, no, I'm just going to say, I hate when business owners make their vision a revenue number. I hate it because it's so underwhelmingly easy to be like, you know what my vision is? 60 million in revenue. And like, what? That's not a vision. What? Let me tell you right now, if you're listening and if I meet you and I'm like, hey man, what's your vision? And you tell me a revenue number, I'm pulling your nose hair so hard, your eyes are just going to water until you can't see. Like it's happening.
And they don't know this, but you're really good at that.
I'm a master of it. I'm finding that nose hair and I'm going to ping. You are going to be crying. and you're going to regret having a number as a vision. You're going to talk about that for a long time. Look, that would be like an athletic. That'd be like a Super Bowl coach being like, "Hey, Andy, you're going to the Super Bowl. Like, what was your vision all along?" And he's like, 16 touchdowns. Like, what? That's not the goal, right? I bet if you asked a football coach right now, I would love to interview one of them and say, look, what was your vision at the beginning of the season? I'm willing to bet it's super detailed and specific, probably has the outcome of like a Super Bowl, but I'm willing to bet they have really detailed items in there that are about the team and health and chemistry and collaboration and how they're running offense and the performance of each individual special teams. Like it's not just going to be like, well, we want 60.
Well, the crazy thing with them with the Chiefs, I think it was until the last game, the AFC Championship game, the entire season, they never scored over like 29, 28, 30 points. Never.
Oh, wow.
The whole season.
Yeah, so they weren't like crushing.
Correct.
Yeah, well. Yeah.
Not just about scoring point after point after point after point. They found a different way to, obviously you have to score, but it's still a different mindset.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, to me, as I think more and more about vision, I also think that it's important CEOs learn from what these high-level coaches are doing. So I think of it this way, right? Yesterday we rebuilt a CEO's calendar. So we did an immersion with the CEO. He's local here in Arizona, and we were rebuilding his calendar. So to start, we had to look at, okay, what's on the calendar? And what's on the calendar was a lot of like individual in the weeds kind of work. So we have to reprogram a lot of that. And lucky enough, you and I work with a lot of CEOs and their number twos. And so you do enough of that, you start to see the pattern. But imagine if a coach on like a Super Bowl team was out warming up with everybody else, right? And they're like taking throws. Like, why would the coach be on the field, right? There's no part of that coach's vision where on their schedule they're like, you know what? I need to practice taking field goals today. That's what I got to do. Can you imagine Andy Reid kicking a field goal, bro? I'd pay so much money to see that.
No, I'd pay to watch him fall on his ass once he did
it. That'd be a great halftime show. But no one questions that, right? No one questions. They're like, hey, coach, stop kicking field goals. Go sit in the booth and like strategize. No one questions.
You might know this better than I do. Obviously, teams, and I'm assuming all sports do this, watch tape of the team that they're playing. Do they do that in soccer as well? You watch the tape?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're watching the tape of, and I'll let you make the leap to business. How much emphasis is put on this is the gift of the team we have versus the quote unquote enemy that we're up against and understanding how they play?
Yeah.
Is there some of that happens in business as well?
I think so. Yeah. And this certainly dovetails really nicely. A good coach, you review game film to one, get a sense of like what's your competition. But I actually think that if you stop there, you disservice your team. The real goal is to look at what are they doing and how do we leverage our strengths better?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
How does the awareness of what's going on there match up better? And in business, the way that typically looks is like our competition is doing these things. What do our customers want? Right? What do our customers need that they're not delivering on, that maybe they're not listening to? But similarly, as a coach, you got to kind of guide your team to like stay in your strengths, stay where your lane is, do what you do great. And the more you double down on that, usually the more successful the business is. And I say usually because it's not an exact science. There's got to be a lot worked into that. But the emphasis from a coach down to their players reviewing game film is it begins with review what your competition does. And maybe you adapt tactics. But if you stop there and you don't train, you don't work on your strengths, now all you're doing is you're completely adjusting and not playing your game. You're playing someone else's game at that point.
Correct. Which I think the approach is, at least in football, I know football better than soccer. They come out with this is how we play. And
Yep.
then at halftime, if they need to make adjustments based on that team, then
Yep.
they make those adjustments based on what happened in the first half.
Definitely. And again, you want your coach in the box doing that kind of stuff. You don't want him taking snaps at the 50 to warm up.
Which is why those guys are up in the box watching
Right.
it unfold.
Right.
They're
They
not
need to
on the
see.
field. Yeah.
Yeah, they need to see. What I think you can take away from this, Mr. CEO, Mrs. CEO, if you're listening, is that if you get on the field in your business, you're not doing your job. You're not able to do your job. And if a coach is on the field taking field goals at warm up, everyone could be like, well, why is he doing that? Shouldn't he be coaching? And I would say the same argument applies to you. It might feel like you're going in and doing the right thing because you're in the weeds and you're helping your team or you're demonstrating something or something didn't get done, so you're fixing it. But what you're abandoning your post, right? You're leaving a gap in the org structure that's really important. And as we built this schedule out with this client, there were like 4 main components that every CEO needs to pay attention to. One, where is your thinking time? And a lot of CEOs, especially like in the first 5 or 7 years of running a company, really struggle with thinking time because it feels like you're not doing anything. And if you're used to being the hustler, the work hard guy, you got to be able to like just think. The second thing is you need meeting time with your key players. Every key player needs a meeting. And if like teams have a managerial structure, then just meet with the manager. But you got to have your key people in meetings and you got to really give them vision, check in on them, see what the support is, all of that. Really important. Third is you got to take self-care seriously. That has to be on your calendar. It can't just, otherwise you'll work 100 hours a week. So you got to have self-care. And then last but not least, I think this is really, really underrated. You have got to find time to get out of the office, collaborate, find partners, make connections, and like drive your network. You have to build your network. And if you have those 4 things on your calendar, whatever else you got time for, you want to get in the weeds, you want to kick field goals at warm-up time, like by all means. But you got to handle those 4 things. Then you can go kick some fucking field goals.
Maybe we could have that client go up against Andy Reid and kicking the field goal.
If Andy Reid's kicking field goals, I want to be a part of it. Like I'll hold it.
He'd be the guy with the with like the beer funnel at the end of the game.
Yeah. Him and Jason Kelsey.
Travis. I think it's
Travis is playing. Jason's the party animal though. He seems cool.
Oh yeah, he's the guy from.
Oh wait, no, they're both playing, right?
No, he's retired.
Oh yeah, that was probably why he has a beer funnel. Point being, behind all this, that we can learn a lot from coaches in athletics. And in athletics, unlike in business, you have much more clear roles. You don't have nearly as much overlap, at least from like leadership to player. In business, it's like, well, I'm the player coach. Like I'm the CEO, but I'm also like I'm doing the bookkeeping, right? I'm like all over the board here. But I think it's a good time, being that it's February, a good time for leaders to really sit down and look at your org chart, look at your calendar and see if your calendar matches your org chart. Like again, your calendar should be 4 things. And those 4 things are really important. Are all of them there? Thinking time, meeting time with key players, self-care, and networking. And that is your job as a CEO. That is your job. Guide the people, think about the strategy, build the strategy and implement it with the people that need to do it. Take care of yourself and meet the high level people that will drive the business forward. Like build your team, right? Build your audience, build your network. And I think that most CEOs, like I've now done this, I don't know, with a couple CEOs like in a month. And what I've noticed is that the only way to build that calendar is to start with an empty slate. It's the only way. Just like you start the season with an empty slate, right? The season's over. Okay, not like, what was it like last year? No. We're at 0. How do we build from where we are rather than try to like just mirror what we did last year? That's really important. Don't copy your calendar and try to change it. Just start over and start from 0.
Including whoever wins on Sunday night. Can't go in with the same thinking next September.
Yep.
there's going to be new players, it's new teams, the whole thing changes.
Yeah. And like between the Super Bowl and when the season starts, I don't even know when the season starts because I'm out of touch. But
Early September usually.
oh wow, yeah. So you have a lot of time. It's 6 months. There's a lot that can change, and sitting and waiting for the news doesn't make any sense, right? You start training again. You take a little bit of time, but then you take your rest. You get back to work. You start training. You start working out. You start meeting the team, and you can't control everything, just like a CEO can't control everything. But you have to adapt to conditions, and I think clearing the slate of your calendar is a really smart way to really look at, are those 4 things incorporated into your week? And if they're not, you're not a CEO. You're kicking field goals.
They're notorious CEOs/owners who are micromanagers.
Mm-hmm.
And those teams have got Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones tries to micromanage the whole thing. Goes nowhere.
Yeah.
The guy who was the owner of the Redskins.
I was just going to say, Dan Snyder was definitely like that.
Well, he leaves. They make it to the playoff the first year without him.
Boom. Yeah. Yeah. I think as a kid that grew up in like DC, and my grandmother was a diehard Redskin fan, and like just watching them. So I was born in '87. I don't think there's been a successful season since I've been alive.
Right.
As interesting as that is, and look, this happens in business too. There's one common denominator, and only one. They had dozens. That's probably an exaggeration. They definitely had multiple quarterbacks, multiple coaches. Bro, they brought in, what was the racer? Joe Gibbs?
Yeah.
Right. They brought in they tried everything.
Yeah.
One common denominator. And, as a business owner, you've also got to have some self-reflection to recognize when you're the problem.
There were reports of that he was pissed because they made it to the playoffs this year.
Really?
Yeah.
He's salty. That's funny.
Well, everyone knew you were the problem.
Oh, you mean Snyder? Not, I thought you meant Joe Gibbs. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's salty. As soon as he gets removed, boom, oh my God, yeah. I'm sure he's salty. But that stuff happens in business all the time. Where like the owner's like, it's not me, it's not me, it's not me, it's not me, it's not me. And then as soon as something changes and they get out of the way, it takes off.
That was Steve Jobs, right? He left, but then they had to keep him in his own lane.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like Snyder got out of his own way, got out of the team's way, got out of everybody's way. And
Washington was celebrating.
Look, he made a bunch of money. Like, go do something that you're better at. Like, please.
Yeah.
Manage I don't know, pick a retirement village and manage that. Like, Jesus. Athletics didn't work.
Oh, and they did it with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of good things coming from that. Look, I think at the end of the day, right, we're looking at another Super Bowl. This happens all the time. Every coach in the NFL wants to win one of these. They've all got the same objective. In business, you don't have one objective, but I think it is important to have one objective, meaning that you have one vision. And that can certainly be a more complicated dynamic in business, but we're watching these two teams compete. Both coaches clearly have had visions. Both quarterbacks have vision as an asset. What makes them successful is visualizing the game, visualizing their opponent, studying film so they can visualize better. Like, vision is a through line through all of the Super Bowl that I don't think many people pay attention to unless you're deeply embedded into athletics and understanding.
Yeah.
It's key.
And not even just the fan. The average fan wouldn't know that either.
No.
You have to understand the mechanics of it.
The same thing is true with soccer. Now, the game is a little bit more complicated because most teams, at least outside of the U.S., have multiple tournaments that they're playing in, and there's a variety of ways to be successful. But the map of this becomes important. Like, where are you going? Are you clear on your destination, your vision? And then along the way, if you have to recalculate, fine, but don't change the goal. And if you make something like, this is why revenue is a bad target. If you make something like revenue your goal and I pluck your nose hair out, then if something changes and you don't hit that, you have to recalculate everything, not just the like route. But if you hold a vision steady, you just recalculate to that vision. You don't have to change everything. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing because at least in the football world, if your goal is to get to the Pro Bowl rather than the Super Bowl, you got big problems.
I like that. Yeah, that's a really good way to say it too. Yeah, wrong target. That's sort of like revenue, right? I want way more revenue.
Yeah.
Like I just want the accolades of what this means. And look,
I'm not even sure you get that in the Pro Bowl anymore.
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah,
it's like football.
Yeah. What comes to mind too is like in the pursuit of business, like revenue could be a very misleading number. I mean, you can have a $10 million business only do $1 million in EBITDA. You can also have a $2 million do $1 million, $2 million revenue company do $1 million in EBITDA, right? And it's just, we're playing a lot of different games. And I think vision is important. How you run your team is important. How sustainable it is important. But that vision for athletics and coaches at high levels is just the same as it is for CEOs. It's a non-negotiable. There's not a single coach in the league that if you're like, hey man, like, what are you shooting for? They're like, I don't know, man. I'm just playing. I love it. Right? Like there's clearly a vision for all of them. And in the business space, there's not nearly as much like there's only one way to win.
Yeah.
And you can have more than one winner. Everybody can win in business. That's like the co-opetition that I think is really important. We're not the only coaching company on the planet, but I don't wake up and go like, well, they won, so we can't. Like, we still have to have our vision. We still have to work hard, but we can all win here.
I just want to get to the 10-yard line. That's all. That's all I want.
Yeah. I just like playing. It's my favorite thing to dress up in the cold in 17 layers. I love it. All right. Let's bring this thing home. 2 questions for you, Marty. What are we betting? What are we betting on the winner? You've chosen incorrectly, but you've chosen the Kansas City Chiefs.
Drink.
All right. All right. Loser buys dinner/drinks.
At the winner's choice.
At the winner's choice. Got it. All right. I'll take that bet.
Now I'm afraid I'm going to lose.
Well, now you're afraid Kansas City is going to lose.
We could only go to Chipotle.
I'm drinking Louis the 13th. I'm drinking the good stuff.
I automatically thought, I know where we're going. I know what we're having to drink.
Yep. $1,000 a shot. Let's go. Second question. When can we get you dressed up in a Andy Reid Kansas City costume?
Is that what I have to wear if I lose?
I think we should. Like,
all right, so I don't have that, but I did pull this out.
Oh, nice. So Baltimore. Okay. Nice. The Baltimore bucket hat. Nice.
I got it when I went to one of the training camps.
Is Andy Reid still rocking the mustache?
I believe so.
All right. So let's get you a mustache and then like a Kansas City outfit.
I mean, I could see him wearing his hat too.
Yeah. Well, we can actually make this happen. Like, I feel like this could be a good. We'll get some. Maybe the meal will be free if you dress up well enough.
It's real. It would not. It really would not be hard.
Yeah, I think we should do this. Anyway, let us know.
And I would probably be just as funny trying to kick a field goal.
Yeah. Well, that's probably accurate. By the time you're listening to this, the winner will have been decided. We are grateful for you sending us as many kind or unkind DMs about whether we were right or wrong or why we should have picked differently. More importantly, though, I want you to be intentional about your calendar, to look at your calendar and make sure you have these 4 things. You have thinking time, you have meeting time with your key employees, you have self-care time, and you have networking time. If you have those 4 things, you are in a better position as a CEO and leader, like a coach would be on a team. You don't want the coach kicking field goals. You want them acting like a coach, just like you want the leader of the business, the CEO, acting like a CEO. And we've got hundreds of data points saying that those are the metrics that move the business forward the fastest. So make sure those are on the calendar. Follow along, jump into Instagram land. Follow me at Aaron Velke. If you are lost on your vision, if you're not sure on how to adapt your calendar, if you feel way too stuck in the weeds, let us tell you about our Living Vision program. We're going to change your business. We're going to change your personal life dramatically in the course of 6 months or a year with a comprehensive methodology that has been proven CEO after CEO after CEO to raise revenue, raise your results, make you happier, have you like totally redesign your calendar. And we know we can do it time and time again. So feel free to reach out to us if you want more information about that.
If they're going with the Chiefs, they probably should follow me on Instagram rather than you. Just saying.
What's your Instagram, Marty?
At Marty Noki.
We should make it like Marty the Magician or like, something like catchy that we can all just enjoy making fun of, but like but it works, Marty the Wizard. I don't know. We're gonna have to play with this a little bit. So for Marty, it's Marty Nocchi. Noki. Got to spell that because otherwise they might not know how to find it. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. Make sure you get out of your own way. And if you need help with vision, you know where to find us. See you guys.